They set her up to fail, but Karoline Leavitt's sharp response left the host and his panel utterly speechless. The studio buzzed with quiet tension as the cameras rolled. The city skyline glowed through the glass windows behind the set, but all eyes inside were fixed on the stage. At the center sat Grayson Holt, a name synonymous with liberal media. Known for his razor-sharp monologues, viral takedowns, and a sarcastic confidence that made his audience cheer and his opponents squirm, Grayson was ready to take another shot. Across from him sat Karoline Leavitt, young, conservative, and seemingly out of place in the room. At least, that's what everyone assumed. The panelists flanking Grayson exchanged knowing smirks, anticipating the spectacle about to unfold. Grayson leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other, his fingers tapping the desk like a drummer counting the first beat of a performance. "All right, Karoline," he began, dragging out her name like a teacher indulging a student who'd just given the wrong answer. "Let's cut through the fluff. You're young, ambitious, and somehow convinced the Republican Party isn't just a retirement club with better tax breaks. Tell me, are you here to defend outdated policies? Or are you just auditioning for a Fox News primetime slot?" A low chuckle rippled through the panel. Someone shifted in their seat, amused. This was familiar territory, Grayson setting the stage for another routine takedown. But Karoline didn't blink. She clasped her hands on the desk, listening patiently, waiting. She didn't rush to defend herself. Grayson took that as an opening to push further. "I mean, let's be real," he continued, adjusting his blazer as if settling in. "Conservatives love parading people like you around. Fresh face, camera ready, but at the end of the day, it's the same script, tax cuts, personal responsibility, and some vague nostalgia about the good old days. It's predictable. The only question is, are you in on the joke?" The camera zoomed in on his smirk. The panelists watched with thinly veiled amusement. Karoline tilted her head, her expression unreadable. She let him talk, let him dig. "Is that a serious question?" she finally asked, her voice smooth and unshaken. Grayson shrugged, spreading his hands. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hit a nerve?" Another chuckle from the panel. The setup was complete. Grayson was comfortable, believing this was going exactly as planned. But something shifted in Karoline's expression, a flicker of something dangerous. Not anger, not nervousness, but certainty. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. She was about to make this his worst honor moment yet. But he didn't know it yet. Grayson sensed an opportunity. He'd been here before, young conservatives coming onto his show, trying to hold their own, only to crumble under the weight of his sarcasm and experience. So he leaned in, pushing harder. "You know, Karoline," he said, drawing out her name again, "I have to admire your confidence. It takes real dedication to be part of a party that, let's be honest, would rather see women stay in the kitchen than in Congress." The panel erupted in laughter. Even the camera crew chuckled. It was a clean hit. But Karoline's face didn't change. Not a twitch. Grayson noticed but was convinced she was just keeping up a front. He kept going. "And I have to ask," he continued, feigning curiosity, "do you actually believe what you say, or is this just a long-term grift? You know, say the right things, keep the donors happy, maybe land a cushy gig as a pundit when this all falls apart." One of the panelists, a journalist from a progressive outlet, smirked and jumped in. "Let's not forget the GOP playbook," she added, shaking her head. "Find someone young, marketable, and willing to repeat the same tired policies in a fresh package. Honestly, Karoline, do you ever feel like they're just using you?" Another round of laughter. The rhythm of the attack was picking up. Grayson saw his chance to land the knockout. "I mean, look at your position, Karoline. You're out here defending a party that fights against diversity initiatives while parading you around as their youthful, modern face. Do you see the irony, or are you contractually obligated to ignore it? The panelist next to him chimed in, laughing. Come on, Grayson, don't be mean. Maybe she actually believes all this. Grayson grinned. The audience, the cameras, the viewers at home, everyone was watching her now, waiting for the inevitable stumble. But Karoline still didn't blink. Instead, she shifted slightly in her seat, straightened her posture, and let the laughter die out on its own. A full 2 seconds of silence. The energy in the room shifted. The moment was hers now. Then she exhaled, tilted her head slightly, and spoke. Are you finished? Grayson blinked. It was subtle, but the power had shifted. No one realized it yet. The laughter died faster than Grayson expected. He was sure he had her. The audience had been on his side. The panel had backed him up. So why did it suddenly feel like he'd lost control of the room? Karoline leaned forward slightly, keeping her hands on the table, her expression unreadable. She wasn't flustered, not angry, just certain. Are you finished? She repeated, her voice even. Grayson forced a chuckle, shaking his head. Oh, Karoline, don't get all dramatic. It's just... No, really, she cut in, her tone so calm it was unsettling. Are you finished? Because I want to make sure I let you get all your little rehearsed jabs out before I respond. The room tightened. Grayson's smirk faltered, just for a fraction of a second. The panelists shifted. The camera crew, suddenly aware that something real was unfolding, instinctively adjusted their angles. They hadn't been expecting this. Karoline tilted her head, not smiling, not frowning, just watching. Then she spoke. See, Grayson, this is what you do. You set people up with smug little sound bites, get your panel to laugh, and then expect your guest to stumble, get defensive, or shrink. And usually, it works. But here's the problem, you didn't do your homework on me. Grayson let out a dry laugh. Oh, believe me, Karoline, No, you didn't, she interrupted, her voice steady. Because if you had, you'd know I don't fold, and I certainly don't let people like you define me. The room was dead silent now. Grayson sat up a little straighter. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Karoline shifted her weight, her voice picking up just enough to cut through the tension. You call me a token, a puppet. You act like I have no agency, no original thoughts, like I'm just here to regurgitate talking points. But here's the irony, you're the one sticking to a script. You came in here with the same tired attacks, the same predictable insults, because that's all you know how to do. Mock, dismiss, belittle. That's your entire playbook. And yet, I'm the one who's supposed to lack originality. A sharp pause. Grayson had no immediate response. Karoline didn't give him room to breathe. You sit there and act like you care about women having a voice, but the second one speaks up in a way that doesn't fit your narrative, you mock her. You act like you care about young people being engaged in politics, but if they're not reading straight from your script, you try to discredit them. You talk about progress, but the second someone challenges you, you fall right back into the same condescending routine. She leaned back. Finally, a smile, but it wasn't friendly. You don't want a conversation, Grayson. You want a punching bag. And I'm not here to be one. Grayson blinked. The panelists looked at each other. One of them cleared their throat, shifting in their seat. The confidence in the room was gone. The camera zoomed in slightly, capturing the rarest thing on a live political show, actual silence. Karoline had flipped the entire dynamic in under 2 minutes. And for the first time in his career, Grayson Holt had nothing to say. But the real impact? That was about to come next. For a second, no one spoke. The silence in the studio wasn't just awkward, it was heavy. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he quickly forced a chuckle, shaking his head like he was still in control. Wow, Karoline, that was quite the little speech. Did you practice that in the mirror this morning? It was a weak attempt at regaining dominance, but it fell flat. The panelists weren't laughing this time. One of them cleared their throat and glanced at the camera crew, as if silently asking, "Are we still live?" Karoline didn't flinch. She just watched him, her confidence unshaken. And then the show cut to commercial, not because it was planned, not because they'd wrapped up naturally, but because someone in the control room panicked. The moment the broadcast went dark, Twitter exploded. Clips from the exchange spread like wildfire. Holy! Karoline just destroyed Grayson Holt on live TV. They literally had to cut to commercial. This was a massacre. I've never seen him this speechless before. This is insane. The video racked up millions of views in hours. Even people who didn't follow politics were hooked. Liberal commentators scrambled to spin the narrative. Some downplayed the moment, saying Grayson was just letting her talk. Others claimed she was being overly dramatic or playing the victim. But it didn't work. The clip spoke for itself. And then things got worse for Grayson. The network's inbox was flooded. People demanded a response. The ratings from the segment came in, and while they were through the roof, the engagement was brutal. Grayson's usual supporters weren't rallying behind him. Instead, some were quietly questioning, did he actually get outplayed? Why didn't he fire back? Why did they cut to commercial so fast? The panelists who had laughed earlier started distancing themselves. One of them, a journalist from a progressive news outlet, tweeted, "To be clear, I don't think Grayson was ready for that moment." It was uncomfortable, and cutting to commercial only made it worse. Which was the professional way of saying he choked. Grayson knew it too. And now he had to make a choice, double down or do damage control. But either way, the damage was already done. Grayson Holt was no stranger to controversy, but this felt different. By the time the show wrapped, his phone was already blowing up. Texts from producers, network executives, his PR team, everyone was panicking. He scrolled through Twitter. Every third post was a clip of his face frozen in silence as Karoline dismantled him. Memes were everywhere. GraysonHolt.exe has stopped working. When your entire personality is being smug, but it backfires. The moment he realized she wasn't playing defense. The clip was on every major news site before he even left the studio. The narrative? Grayson Holt gets humiliated on live television. He slammed his phone down. This wasn't just bad, this was career-threatening. His producer called. "We need a statement." Damage control was standard in media, but this time they were scrambling. The plan? Frame it as Grayson being gracious, giving Karoline a platform to share her perspective. Minutes later, his PR team put out a tweet from his account, "Great conversation tonight with Karoline Leavitt. We don't always agree, but these discussions are important for democracy. Looking forward to more debates like this." No one bought it. The replies were brutal. "Dude, you got cooked. Just take the L. Why are you pretending you let this happen? You got wrecked." This is the PR equivalent of pretending you meant to trip on stage. The network wasn't happy, not because of the viral moment, but because of how bad he looked. One executive scheduled an emergency meeting. There was talk of restructuring the panel format to avoid another disaster like this. A leaked email circulated online from an unnamed producer at the network. "We should have cut to commercial sooner." This was a disaster. The leak only made things worse. Now people knew the commercial break wasn't routine, it was a panic move. Grayson Holt was losing so badly, they had to pull the plug. And now, everyone was talking about it. Meanwhile, Karoline did nothing. No frantic tweets, no press statements, no victory lap. Just a single post on her account, let people say what they want. The truth always speaks for itself. The simplicity of it made it hit even harder. And by the next morning, it was Grayson Holt's reputation that was hanging in the balance. But the true impact? That was about to hit even harder. By the next morning, Grayson Holt was everywhere, but not in the way he was used to. Cable news shows analyzed the moment. Political commentators, both left and right, picked apart why he failed. Some liberal hosts tried to downplay it, it wasn't that bad. He just let her talk too long. But others weren't so kind. This is what happens when you get too comfortable attacking people instead of debating them. The real hit, though? Late-night comedians. One show played the clip, pausing right on Grayson's stunned silence. Folks, this is the look of a man realizing his entire personality is collapsing in real time. The audience roared with laughter. Even his own fans couldn't spin this one. Some tried, but the replies buried them under a pile of memes and undeniable facts. Karoline didn't just win the argument, she became the story. Conservative media called it one of the greatest takedowns in TV history. Clips of her response flooded social media. But something bigger was happening. The narrative around her was shifting. She was no longer just a young Republican trying to make a name for herself. She was the woman who walked into a hostile room and walked out untouchable. And that's when the invitations started pouring in. More interviews, bigger platforms, speaking offers, a book deal rumored in the works. People who had dismissed her before were now paying attention. And Grayson? For the first time in his career, Grayson Holt wasn't setting the conversation. He was the conversation. His show's ratings spiked, but not in a good way. People were watching, waiting for him to mess up again. The network was getting nervous. Executives scheduled a reputation strategy meeting. A senior producer, one of his biggest supporters, stepped down. It wasn't an official punishment, but everyone saw the writing on the wall. Grayson Holt was damaged goods. And Karoline? She just cemented herself as a rising force in politics. But the real lesson? That's coming up next. Some moments fade within hours. This one didn't. Days passed, but the clip kept circulating. It wasn't just about a debate, it was about something deeper. People on both sides of the political spectrum took notice. Some saw it as a warning, never underestimate your opponent. Others saw it as proof that authenticity beats performance. But one thing was undeniable, this wasn't just a viral moment. It was a shift. Grayson Holt had built his career on mockery, control, and scripted takedowns. He never debated in good faith, he humiliated. That worked until it didn't. His loss wasn't just about a single conversation, it was about the illusion breaking. People saw it happen in real time. They watched someone who always had the upper hand lose it completely. And once that happens, the spell is broken. Karoline Leavitt didn't win because she yelled louder. She didn't win because she out-insulted him. She won because she never flinched. She didn't defend herself desperately. She didn't let the room decide how she should react. She stayed calm. She called out the game Grayson was playing. And in doing so, she made him the one on defense. That's what made it powerful. Grayson Holt's career isn't over, but it's changed. The confidence he once carried won't hit the same. His audience saw him struggle. His critics saw him exposed. And Karoline? This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a career-defining one. A moment that made people pay attention. A moment that turned mockery into a movement. Here's the truth, we all face moments like this. Maybe not on live TV, maybe not with millions watching. But in our own way, we all get tested. We all get put in situations where someone tries to belittle us, where someone expects us to fold. And in those moments, the way you handle yourself changes everything. Do you let them define you? Or do you take control of the moment? That's the real lesson here. What do you think? Was this a strategic takedown by Karoline, or was it just pure confidence in action? And what do you think this says about modern media? Drop your thoughts in the comments, let's talk about it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. Because trust me, there's more to uncover.